NBA betting market video with the Fat Guy for January 11th, 2021. Fat Guy, we'll start off with the Suns Wizards game. There's 491 bets, so not a lot of bets so far. 7 p.m. Eastern time start. Suns opened as 6.5-point favorites on the road. They're still 6.5-point favorites on the road. 63% of early bettors on the Suns. However, 88% of the money on the Wizards. And despite that very, very small amount of 491 bets, and 88% of the money being on the Wizards, this line has not really moved. It's budged, 1 point on the juice?
Yeah, yeah. So like I had mentioned in past market videos, this is an indicator that perhaps the hold, like the amount of money bet on this game is really low because it's not really like 88% might be 88% of, $20,000. Like not that much, not enough to move it very much, just 1 point. So I don't think there's too much to gather out of that. Mind you, there is limits though. So if it was something like 20,000, you might have like, you know what I mean, 6 or 7 pros max betting that. So there is some intrigue. So perhaps the early pros do like the Wizards at that number. So that is one way of looking at it. Conversely, though, look at the money line.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I think we got to start doing spread and money line at the same time because
Yeah,
it paints a better picture. Even though we usually tend to think that less people are betting the money line, still there is 84% of the money on the Suns as relatively large favorites. 75% of bets as well on the Suns. So really, this might be just equilibrium. There might be equal money
yeah,
on both sides, but this is one of those opposite ones where if the Suns win and the Wizards cover, Vegas is, at least the books look like they're going to take a hit in this game. But there's only 491 bets. It's way too early to make any assumptions off of this number of bets and what's going to be happening to the
yeah.
market as we hit close. Onto the OU, which opened 231, still 231, 69% of bets on the over. However, 87% of the money is on the under.
Yeah, but they ticked the juice down for the under, so that's like the smallest of reverse line movements, but reverse line movement nonetheless.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think you can gather much from just because this. I'm just gonna say it's too low of a handle to understand, and I'm just interested how much of like the one question I have though is how much of the money line is like parlay tickets added. Do you know what I mean? Because that would be a really square thing, and it would make a lot of sense. It really, because who's really just betting, like $250 to make 100 on the Suns? I don't know. I think it's interesting in that maybe it's just pros on with because it most likely pros take points, so Wizards in the points, and then Suns maybe it's just parlay tickets. That's just kind of how they're doing it, but I'm not sure. We don't exactly have how the figures are cut up. But as it looks like, there's not much to gain as far as a market perspective on this game.
Knicks Hornets should be a little bit more interesting because we do have 1,248 bets. Charlotte opened as 4-point favorites. They've been bet up to -4.5. The juice has moved a little bit as well, but this is one of those games, again, where this might not even be a movement. And we can see that with the money line, which opened -171. It's currently
Yeah.
-172. 98% of the money, though, on the Hornets money line. Everything else there is fairly even.
I honestly think taking the Knicks money line is probably a better play if you were going to take something. I mean, if you're going to take the Hornets, I would imagine that -4.5 at +102 is probably better. If you like the Knicks, I would imagine taking the money line is better, although a much higher variance play. If you don't have the bankroll management, variance will kill you eventually. However, I do think this is interesting, at least, especially with so many bets. They're kind of holding the line like Toto on the Knicks, so that does create some sort of intrigue for me as far as perspective betting. And you know what's interesting too, Big Right? I don't believe, although Knicks being from New York, they're not exactly a public team necessarily. Like at least as of late, the Hornets especially aren't. I wouldn't imagine. Again, we're gathering data, so I'm gonna find out for sure one way or another. But it is weird that I think there's this many bets on one of the earlier games. Like conversely, look at the other two games: 605 for Bucks Magic, Bucks being one of the best teams in the league in theory, and 491 on the Suns Wizards. So that's something of intrigue. On to the over under.
It opened 211. It's been bet up to 212. 60% of bettors, 77% of the money has helped push that line up 1 point.
Yeah, that's. I'm betting that there's probably a low amount of money bet on the OU in particular. They probably got a lot of these OUs down to a science, I would imagine. I mean, like, obviously they have everything down to a science, but some better than others. And perhaps this is 211, 212, 213 in there with varying juice is equilibrium, I would imagine. And so perhaps this is just a lateral movement more or less.
And then on to the Bucks Magic, 605 bets so far. Bucks open as 9.5 point favorites. They've been bet up to 10 point favorites with minus 109 juice on the current line. Despite the line moving in their favor, they have only received 40% of bets and 45% of the money.
Perhaps this is a market bracing for public money. I think that's a possibility. Only 605 bets. Public money, I would imagine, in aligns with the Bucks. We don't know for sure, but that would make a lot of sense to me. So Bucks, I mean, because they should expect a little bit of flow, right? So it should maybe balance. So maybe this is equilibrium. Minus 10, minus 109. And perhaps there is a little bit of value, perhaps on the Magic, plus 10 at minus 101, if you are looking at that. The money line, conversely, has moved 386 to 405 for the Magic and minus 474 to minus 501 for the Bucks.
We don't have the money percentages there, but
Yeah.
It is interesting to see that 64% of bettors are on the Magic. It's essentially a 4-1 underdog. So it's a
That's not a popular Joe thing.
no, that's an interesting line indeed. So it looks like books might be taking, well, they are taking a lot of exposure right now if the bet percentages line up with the money percentages on the Magic.
Or close, at least.
And then the OU for this game opened 225. They've been bet up to 226. 75% of bettors have helped push that over up 1 point. However, 86% of the money has been put on the under.
This is another idea. Are they bracing themselves for public money? Because it is the Bucks. They are a, I guess, prolific team considering recent success and star power of the Greek Freak. So perhaps that's what they're doing, but they're offering perhaps a really good line on the under as well. Because despite all the money and the contrast between money to volume, which indicates, which is a sharp indication, there is a reverse line movement on the OU to 226. So that is an interesting point as well.
And then on to the next game, which is Grizzlies Cavs. 1,134 bets placed on this game so far. Grizzlies opened as 1 point favorites. They've been bet up to 2 point favorites, and the juice is pushed up as well to minus 111. 56% of bettors and 80% of the money has helped push that line up for the Grizzlies. I'll also add in the money line, which opened at minus 113, bet up to minus 132. Grizzlies on the road. 51% of bettors are on the Grizzlies. However, 95% of the money is on the Grizzlies as well. So money heavy on the Grizzlies, and this line has only pushed up 1 point, which is interesting to me.
I was just going to comment on that. It feels like they want to take exposure on the Cavs almost, right? Like, obviously there's going to be some buyback on the Cavaliers at some point, but they're not really incentivizing you, to be honest, right? Like 1 to 2 points isn't, I mean, that's really minimal, right? Like really, really minimal. And 102 to 119, that's a bit better, but it's still minimal. Like I think, I always say this, I have this line I seem to reiterate a lot. If the book wants me to do them a favor, they have to incentivize it, and they haven't really on the Cavaliers, which makes me think that they're perhaps open to taking exposure, and I'm not sure why that is. And again, we're not speculating on picks necessarily, but it is a point of intrigue. So I think we should look out for how the Cavaliers perform this evening. But things could change by market close, so that's always like maybe they're expecting balancing money on the Cavaliers to come in later, because betting is like voting. It comes in waves, certain parties vote in the morning while others are at work, and then when the ones get off work, they vote afterwards. There is a possibility of that. So perhaps the pros don't work. This is what they do. They're betting early on the Grizzlies, and perhaps the Joes, once they get off work or at lunch, are going to be betting on the Cavaliers. There's always that opportunity considering the waves and the different timing of wagers coming in. So it kind of feels a little bit like the Bucks one, but odd in that they're not incentivizing betting on the Cavs very much.
This line opened at the OU for this game, opened 207. It's still 207. The juice hasn't even moved. 67% of bettors on the over. However, 62% of the money is on the under.
Would imagine that's Pro versus Joe money, and probably not a lot of it because it probably doesn't cross the threshold for moving it at all. Or maybe they just really are sharp on this, and this is just a. I want to see. I have a question. Is this OU going to fluctuate very much throughout the maturity of this market? That's a question I have.
Next up, 605 bets on the Sixers Hawks game. Hawks open 6.5-point favorites, still 6.5-point favorites. Juices only ticked up 1 point on the Sixers side. 37% of bets on the Hawks. 76% of the money, however, has been placed on the Hawks. So we do have a reverse juice movement of 1 point, fat guy, on the Sixers.
Again, something we saw in the first game, the smallest of reverse line movements. But perhaps this also falls under the same guys because there was only, 490 bets on the Suns game earlier and now 605. So perhaps this isn't very much money weighted. So it might be a reverse line movement the slightest amount, but there probably isn't that much money in relative to something like the Bucks game wagered.
I'm just going to quickly take it off the market. Sonny just asked in chat, we need an NBA chat. Start it up. I'll pay to get in. Sonny, we do have a Discord that's part of our YouTube membership. So just below the video, if you click join, I think it's $5 a month Canadian, which is like pennies in US dollars.
Yes.
So feel free to join us there. We do have an NBA chat as well as a ton of other chats. I don't know. There's like 20 different channels now on our Discord. With different things that we all talk about. So feel free to join and jump in, and we do talk NBA every day. On to the Sixers Hawks money line. Hawks open -245. They've been bet down to -237. 73% of bettors have helped push that line down in the Sixers' favor. So it's interesting to see. I don't think 1 point in juice against the spread would move a line from 215 to 208, but I could be wrong there.
No. I don't think you are. I think that's bizarre. Again, we don't have the numbers right in front of us, but we are working on those types of things in the background so that we can probably reference to eventually. We just need to collect a little bit more of a sample. But that's what we've been doing this entire year because I think we're going to be more well-informed in regards to this season, especially considering the one thing, though, is this season's data is going to be more relevant than the past 2 or 3 seasons combined, more or less, considering the protocols that are in place. So going forward, if this is the new normal, as they call it, then this data is going to be more relevant, and it's going to serve us well in theory.
On to the Pacers-Kings game. 1,059 bets on this game so far. Pacers opened as 4-point favorites. They've been bet up to 5.5-point favorites. However, the juice still favors the Kings at +5.5 at -111. 31% of bettors are on the Kings early. However, 60% of the money has been placed on the Kings. So we do have it's an interesting market because if you look at if you just had the percentage of bets, fat guy, it looks like a pretty standard move. But with 60% of money coming in on the Kings, it's a little bit of a reverse line movement for the Pacers.
Not necessarily if you include the balancing act with the money line. We see that a lot of conversion there because the Pacers are getting love as far as money goes. And the Pacers do feel like the Joe team and the Kings the pro team. But there is a little bit of discrepancy here because to be honest, it feels like they don't want you to take the Kings realistically. Like 5.5 -111 from 4 even. Because the opening line, it's like, please take the Kings, more or less, right?
Yeah. And
then now it's like, don't do it. So maybe 5 is the key number on that. But then again, me, if I'm going to be between paying 5.5 and or getting 5.5 at -111 juice, I would rather +179, I would imagine, on the money line. Again, we don't have those figures, so this is just a
hypothesis,
experience hypothesis. There is higher variance to 1, obviously taking the money line over the spread, but that is interesting. Whereas the Pacers, I would imagine if you did like them, probably laying 5.5 at 101 is probably a better play than laying 202 to win the game straight up. I know these are micro percentages, but they all add up at the end of the year, right? Think about this. If you were a day trader, I know we go back to this all the time, but it's so important. If you're a day trader and you can make an extra 0.5% or 1% per trade, you make 1,000 trades, it's going to accumulate to a lot of money over a long time. So all of this stuff, very important no matter what your unit sizing is. Because what your unit sizing is, you're going for ROI. not necessarily the dollars. If your bankroll only permits you to bet $10, it's about ROI. Show impressive ROI that's impressive regardless of what size it is.
And then the OU for this game, not much to talk about. 228 is what it opened at. The juices moved up 4 points on the over to minus 109. 54% of bettors, 60% of money on the over. So really not a ton of market data there.
Standard.
Yeah. On to the next game. 756 bets on the Raptors Trailblazers game. Blazers opened as 4-point favorites. They've been bet up to 5-point favorites, despite 54% of bettors and 61% of the money being on the Raptors. But looking at the money line, with 72% of the money on the Trailblazers helping push that line up, it kind of makes sense that this is probably fairly equal as far as the handle they are taking on both sides.
No, absolutely. This does. It's great to have money line and ATS right next to each other, because you really get a perfect outlook, more or less. Paints a better picture, as Big Riot said. That's the right idiom, I would say. And like I said, this doesn't seem like a spot where, like, if you like the Blazers, I don't know if -5, -107 is better than -199. I think it's probably pretty close. Whereas the Raptors, I don't know, maybe taking 5 points at just 103 seems reasonable. This does seem to be more or less a balanced market if you do extrapolate all the numbers, because perhaps they are taking exposure on the Raptors, right? Because the Raptors' victory seems like it would be bad for the books. But there isn't that much money.
It's one of those. This is one of those Vegas middles where if the Blazers win by 1 to 3 for sure, then the books are going to make out as winners, because they got the
big winners, not just winners.
There's money on the Raptors against the spread, and there's money on the Blazers. So they actually want the Blazers to win big, or they want the Raptors to win this game, ideally. So if the Blazers win by 1 to 4, then the people at home, let's say, are going to be happy with this one, and the books will probably lose. Albeit, though, this is one game in many, so who knows how much exposure the books actually take. And
it might be none. They might just be risking profits, right?
Yeah, and as this market reaches maturity, these things could split essentially
level out so easy
at that point. So there's not a ton of value right now as far as if you and I were looking to bet this game. There's nothing really sticking out to us that we would love. On to the OU, which opened at 233. It's been bet down 2 points to 231. 66% of bettors on the over. However, 66% of the money has helped push that line down 2 points.
Another lateral movement here. I don't think there's much to expand on.
Not at all. That is it, guys, for the January 11th NBA betting market video. Good luck to you guys for your January 11th.
One final thought. Like Sonny Lanos had mentioned in the comment section, if you are interested in chatting NBA, we do have a Discord that offers a variety of sports, not just NBA, NFL, MLB, motorsports, NCAA basketball, football, NHL season coming up, as well as the resources that we do draw upon. So there is value in it, and it's as low as $5 Canadian. You got to throw in a commercial from here and there. So good luck.